The man fought with all his might to kill the dragon. Just when he thought it was over, he didn't expect the dragon to have self-healing abilities. The wound from the severed dragon head was writhing continuously. The man punched the ground to vent his frustration. Is this how everything ends? Every teammate sacrificed themselves, but it still couldn't change the outcome. The man gathered all his strength to prepare for a final blow, but at this point, he was already exhausted. The dragon was gathering magical power in its mouth. In an instant, a beam of light shot out. The purple beam instantly engulfed him. The next second, the man was splashed awake with a bucket of cold water. He looked at the environment in front of him. I can't help but doubt that I've returned to the era of slavery, but slavery has long been abolished. However, the bald man in front of me was the merchant who controlled me back then. The man couldn't believe he had really gone back to the past. Looking at the silent man, the bald man swung his fist down. The intense pain made the man even more certain. He had returned to the beginning of all the stories from 6 years ago. The Age of Adventurer. The port city is the starting point for adventurer. Mysterious legendary gates appeared all over the world. Inside, there were countless rare treasures, but it was also filled with various magical beasts. Even though it was fraught with danger inside, but people still flocked to it, and those people were called adventurers. At this time, Walker and his group arrived at the slave market because they needed a slave that could serve as bait. Inside the portal, countless adventurers died due to unexpected variables, so someone needed to divert attention. When they escaped, this plan received everyone's agreement. The man was unfortunately chosen due to his small stature. Then everyone arrived at a portal. Fortunately, no one had entered the portal yet. He immediately made a scratch on the tree with a knife as proof that someone had already entered inside. The mysterious world excited them immensely. It looked completely like a rookie team. Just as they were searching for an exit, a huge mouth appeared behind them. Soon, a team member met their end. All of this was completely unexpected for them, because portals usually form far from monster habitats. But now, so many magical beasts appeared. Raymond was the first to use his magic wand to form a fire arrow. The arrow struck a magical beast. This bought them some time. They immediately tied two slaves to a tree and hurriedly escaped while the beast was distracted. But they couldn't hold out for long and fell under the monster's claws. At this moment, Walker was already trembling with fear. Terrified, Talon urged him to calm down. As long as they unite, there might be a way out. Just as they were about to pounce, a magical beast suddenly appeared behind him and struck down with a claw, instantly meeting its end. Raymond prepared to shoot another fire arrow. The nearby beast shot out its long tongue, firmly locking him in place, unable to break free. In the next second, he became the beast's meal. At this point, Walker was so scared he wet himself and even forgot the most basic combat skills. Just when he was left with only half a body, the previous slave unexpectedly appeared before him. He seemed to see a lifeline, but the man was oblivious, unmoved. After a moment, the man's lips curled up slightly, then he leaped down. Sorry I'm late. At this moment, Walker finally realized he did it on purpose. Filled with anger towards the man, do you think you can leave here? But the next second, it fell silent. A man and a beast faced off for 2.5 seconds, but the magical beast clearly wasn't done. Then it suddenly shot up. Just at the moment of contact, the man thrust and pierced through the magical beast's body. I will never die here. He then picked up Raymond's fire magic staff, very suitable for his current state, perfectly matched to his skill level. But he knew, adventurers should possess more than just weapons. Otherwise, returning would be meaningless. Suddenly, he saw a boot. Based on past experience, some people would hide valuable treasures in their own boots. Sure enough, he found a ring inside that could control moving objects. At this moment, the magical beast, smelling blood, surrounded him. The man took the initiative to attack. The first magical beast was instantly pierced through, using another one to spit out its long tongue. The man hurriedly used his spear to block. He saw the magical beast exert force and break him. Just as the man was in a daze, a huge bloody mouth appeared behind him. The man quickly sidestepped to avoid it, drawing his bow to shoot a fire arrow. Then he waved with one hand. The fire arrows, under the control of the ring, moved freely, forming a crescent around the man, instantly piercing through a group of magical beasts. Just as he was thinking of launching the fire skill again, the magic staff surprisingly had no effect. He didn't expect that this skill actually had a cooldown. He had no choice but to engage in close combat. But for the magical beasts, it didn't cause much damage. It could only slightly block their assault. After a moment, cooldown time is over. The fired flame arrows pierced through the magical beast again. The man looked at everything in front of him calmly. Suddenly a voice sounded behind him. "You are not an ordinary slave." The man did not expect that he was still alive. Not sure if this is luck or misfortune. Woman, looking at the magic staff in his hand that originally belonged to Raymond, she had to suspect that the man in front of her had some scheme. The man just quietly looked at her. "Sorry, you're mistaken. Even if I have some plan, the outcome would not be different. Because no matter what, I will kill you all. I will never spare those like you, who use slaves as bait." After returning to the harbor city, the first thing the man did was go to the commercial alliance. He must free himself, gain freedom. The wheels of fate have turned again. He must quicken his pace to avoid repeating the same mistakes. At this time, Abes received a report from a subordinate. A slave bait has returned alive and completely unharmed. The other team members all died in the dungeon. He is the only one who returned alive. Upon hearing this, Abes felt that this matter was unusual. Most importantly, he did not escape, but returned here. Those who became slaves due to death, even if they return, they will ultimately become bait again. This also means he is very clear. It is difficult to break free from their control, because the only way to break free is death. When his subordinate reported another matter, Abes was obviously taken aback, because the slave they mentioned actually opened the first ring. Due to the slave's extreme hatred for the merchant, negative emotions, he had to worry that other problems would arise. At this moment, his subordinate mentioned Borm's request again. This request was somewhat unexpected for Abes. A slave bait actually wants to register as an adventurer. Moreover, Mr. Lakin ordered him to personally investigate this matter. Upon hearing this, Abes stood up directly from his chair. He never expected a senior executive of a business alliance would actually pay attention to a slave child. He had to suspect it was because of that matter. Humans have always been slaves to money. If they cannot repay the borrowed money, then they compensate through labor. When Borm's father fell ill, on that day, he became one of them. Black showed the herbs he purchased from the Merchant Alliance on credit, but the Merchant Alliance priced them at several times the market price. Borm was completely unable to repay such a huge debt, and had no choice but to be forced to perform equivalent labor for the Merchant Alliance. Thus Borm became a slave. Now is the beginning of his revenge. He knew that sitting across from him was Abes, the supervisor of the Merchant Alliance, the right-hand man of Mr. Lakin. Abes made it clear that he could change his contract to an F-rank adventurer, but Borm did not want to follow their pace, and directly stated that what he wanted was E-rank. Over the past 3 years, Borm, as a slave bait, explored hundreds of dungeons, and the main task of an adventurer is to come back alive, because the information brought back is more important than personal achievements. At this moment, Abes had to acknowledge Borm's survival ability, but that was all. Because they only entered lower-ranked dungeons, he did not believe Borm's survival ability could be effective in high-level dungeons. Borm felt his disdain. He mentioned the dungeon that only 5 people could enter. Upon hearing this, Abes burst out laughing, because this dungeon had at least 12 teams' bones buried in it. If Borm could demonstrate his value, he would agree to his request to modify the contract terms. The next day, a team of 5 gathered. The captain, the abandoned husband, was very friendly towards Borm. and did not care about his identity as a slave bait. Their purpose for entering the dungeon this time was not to kill monsters, but to retrieve the items from the 12 teams. As long as they returned the found items to the Merchant Alliance, they would receive a reward. The dungeon this time is a dense forest. The sky is bright, but very oppressive. Their primary task is to set up a base. To ensure their own safety, the group split into 2 teams to explore the surrounding terrain. During the exploration, no monsters or items were found. The abandoned husband stated that they are all good people, and expressed sympathy for Borm's identity as a slave bait, and asked if he would like to join them. Borm silently stared at a stone on the ground. Night fell. The group took a moment to rest. At that moment, a campfire appeared behind Borm. The ones who came were the 4 from the abandoned husband. Their wolfish ambitions were finally revealed. It turned out, the magic staff on Borm is worth at least 10,000 euros. Therefore, they put sleeping pills in the water he just drank, enough to put a 100 kilogram mushroom to sleep. Just when they thought the hunting game had begun, they realized that the feeling of hitting the target was unusual. Under the blanket was actually a thick tree stump. Before they could react, the tree stump suddenly exploded. A shadow not far away watched everything unfold. The sound of the recent explosion attracted the dungeon boss, the golden slime. He suddenly opened his mouth wide towards their location. With a fierce expression, the group, who originally wanted to retrieve their equipment, had no choice but to flee quickly. Base instantly transformed beyond recognition under the destruction of the golden slime. The abandoned husband and others could only flee in a panic. In front of the golden slime, they were like ants. Suddenly, blob of slime attacked them. Everyone was terrified. Looking at the spot where the explosion just occurred, he could actually shoot corrosive substances from his body. Robert shouted that this was cheating. It can even attack from a distance. At this moment, the golden slime chased after them again. Now, to defeat it, they must find its core. Taking advantage of the slime skill's cooldown time, Max turned around and charged in alone. He suddenly appeared in front of him with a flash. The abandoned husband still wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Suddenly, the acid arrow shot out again. Max was instantly split in 2. They never expected this. There should have been at least 10 seconds of cooldown, yet it ended early. In the next second, the acid arrow shot towards their location again. The group, unable to dodge, instantly turned to Bone. Bone, hiding behind a stump, watched everything unfold. The abandoned wife's judgment was not wrong. However, after the golden slime devours an object, it becomes stronger, thus shortening the skill's cooldown time. From its massive size, now, the acid sword skill has almost no cooldown time. He understood now why the previous 12 teams had failed, and there wouldn't be anything else in the dungeon. This mission was destined to end in failure. However, when he thought of Abyss's ugly fate, it was as if he had made up his mind. Then a fire arrow struck precisely at the location of the golden slime's core. But due to magical resistance, it didn't deal a fatal blow. Looking at the situation before him, he needed to hit at least 5 more times. He then tied the short blade with the rope. His face was filled with confidence. Facing the sudden acid arrow, Bone could only keep dodging. He had to hit the same spot accurately. This might be difficult for an ordinary mage, but with the mind-sensing ring, he could do it accurately. The explosive fire arrow hit the target again. The hurt monster retaliated. In the moment of dodging, it shot another arrow. The arrow hit precisely. At this point, a large pit had appeared in the monster's body. Next was to pursue the victory. Under the continuous attack, the monster's core was finally exposed. Just as he was about to deliver a fatal blow, a large hand suddenly appeared behind him. He had no choice but to control the short blade to change direction, dodging the large hand's attack. After stabilizing his position, he released the fire arrow again. Seeing this, the slime hurriedly used its large hand to block. Bone's mouth slightly curled up. The rapidly flying arrow actually bypassed its large hand, hitting the core of the golden slime. In the next second, it exploded instantly. Bohm then used the short blade to lock onto a position in the tree. He then leaped up onto the trunk. Moments later, Bohm discovered at the center of the explosion. Under his control, it came to his hand. Then a brilliant red light appeared. At this moment, Bohm found reported on the situation of entering the underground city. Abyss was somewhat speechless. Why did he come back all alone again? But the mission was still deemed a failure. Bohm could only explain. The members of this mission were all new adventurers. They coveted my equipment. I could only escape from them. They seemed to have encountered the boss of the underground city, the golden slime. Everything was melted. Upon hearing this, Abyss cursed inward. This was quite a lot. And the problem is that one person came out alive. This means that the underground city cannot be entered again. It turns out the underground city has some rules. First, the number of entrants cannot exceed the number on the gatepost. After that, the main gate will be closed until all the people inside are eliminated. Second, the difficulty level of the gate is determined by its color, ranging from red to purple with varying difficulty. At the same time, those with the higher circle count than the gate's difficulty cannot enter. Finally, if someone survives, the underground city gate will be destroyed and cannot be entered again. Although it is known that due to the golden slime, it is impossible to retrieve anything inside. Ultimately, it is still deemed a mission failure. Bohm knew he was not likely to easily let it go. He then removed his wrist guard. Ate that golden slime's magic stick. Looking at the circle, count on Bohm's wrist, Abyss showed an incredibly shocked expression. He actually opened the second circle. Bohm originally just wanted the other party to fulfill their promise, to sign a contract to become a level 1 adventurer. Abyss directly gave him a D rank and promised to train him towards the direction of a top adventurer. It turns out, the level of an adventurer is greatly influenced by the number of circles open. Circles represent power and strength. The difference in treatment is obvious. At the same time, new adventurers correspond to E and F rank. Newbie adventurers correspond to C and D rank. Top adventurers correspond to B and B rank. Abyss noticed that Bohm was different from others. It couldn't just be because he absorbed the magic stick, that he could increase the number of circles. Rather than saying it was survival instinct, it would be more accurate to say it was overwhelming talent. Because he had never seen such a rapid growth rate. He had just unlocked the first ring, and then immediately unlocked the second one. Although it was faster than Bohm had expected, he knew he didn't have much time left, because next, a red level dungeon would appear. That required 100 people to rank. By that time, all the major guilds in the port city would pay attention to this matter. In the end, Bohm made a request to Abyss. Can you lend me some money? Abyss had a black line on his face. Isn't this a bit excessive? He thought Bohm would use it to buy his own equipment. But instead, he went straight to the slave market. In Bohm's past life memory, although some said, the dungeon opened the era of adventure. This was all a scheme of the dark sorcerer. Countless adventurers died in the dungeon, crushing the future of the Maple Leaf world. In the end, all the monsters, waiting for the opportunity, rushed into the dungeon. And that moment is not far away. So, Bohm must strengthen his power before that. At this time, he found the so-called madman, D, a slave that no one wanted to buy. But only Bohm knew. He was the hero of Changfu, the first and also the last disciple. And his death also indirectly accelerated the end of the Maple Leaf world. It was precisely because of the man in front of him, the hero killer D. He, like, was one of the few who were only noticed on the last day. And this time, he would definitely bring him under his control. Bohm asked for the price he needed. Debo said it was 1 million. This price was within Bohm's expectation. He knew that Debo had a sister who suffered from black blood disease and urgently needed money. Then he unhesitatingly took out 1 million. This move shocked the two people beside him. They thought he was some rich second generation from a family. Without saying a word, Debo snatched the contract. He quickly pressed his fingerprint down. afraid the other party would back out. Then they were to go to conquer the dungeon. Suddenly, Bohm had a serious expression. I need you to prove your worth. Debo smiled wide. You will see. Someone who has never worked so hard. Debo, holding a long axe, was quite puzzled. He was clearly skilled with a sword. So why was he given a long axe? Bohm did not explain much, only stating that if he wanted to cooperate with him, he had to use the long axe. Otherwise, the contract would be terminated. Saying this, the two arrived at the dungeon that could accommodate a maximum of 8 people, and the scratch on the tree represented the complete annihilation of the previous team. At this time, Debo was still wondering where the other members were. There should at least be a healer, right? Bohm calmly pointed at him. It's just you. At this moment, the air seemed to freeze. Before he could react, he was kicked inside. Debo angrily shouted, Are you crazy? We clearly need an 8-person team. And now only 2 people have come in. Bohm looked at him with a serious expression and said nothing. An earlier noise attracted a large number of stump monsters. They are known for their hard bark, making it difficult for swords and spears to pierce. Just as Debo was calculating how to kill them, a rocket instantly pierced through the nearest monster. Such a troublesome stump monster was actually killed in one hit. And it was a group 1. The scene completely overturned Debo's understanding. After a moment, all the stump monsters in front of them fell. Bohm warned Debo behind him. I hope we don't make the same mistake next time. At this moment, Debo just wanted to know who the monster in front of him was. On the other side, a subordinate was reporting to the master. The Merchant Alliance has taken the... We are still working on the timeline for the implementation, but we have already selected the people to send. Do we need to continue? After receiving a positive response, the subordinate disappeared into the dark. Under the moonlight, a man appeared before him. Everything will be done according to that person's wish for the freedom of the Maple Leaf world. This battle also yielded a lot of magic stuff. According to the contract, after the 7-to-3 ratio, it's also a considerable income. The two then arrived at a gathering place of stump monsters. Debo looked at Bohm with curiosity, but Bohm looked at him with a blank expression. The next second, Debo wisely raised his long axe and charged forward. With a single strike, he split the stump monster in two. Seeing this, other monsters also surrounded him. Although killing monsters was easy for him, he couldn't help but curse that damn boss in his heart. How could he make himself use a weapon he had never used before? But only Bohm knew in his heart, the long axe was the weapon most suited for him. Because he was the disciple of the long axe hero, Alun Won, and the reality was just as Bohm had anticipated. The long axe had a great range and great power, and once adapted, it felt incredibly easy to use. Killing monsters was even more effortless. Bohm knew he had already adapted to the long axe. Without awakening the first, he could possess such strength. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A huge branch broke through the wall. Then it smashed toward Debo. Debo looked at the monster in front of him in shock. A giant tree monster appeared before him. At a critical moment, Bohm picked him up. In his view, size had nothing to do with threat. A larger size only made it an easier target. Immediately, a fire arrow shot out, but it was deflected by the tree monster's branch like a whip. Bohm didn't expect it to be so accurate. Then he shot the second arrow. But even when manipulating the arrow to attack from behind, it was still easily dodged. Twice, he failed to hit the target. The two could only flee in panic. At this moment, Bohm also realized the problem lay with the tree's branch. The next second, a branch came crashing down at them. The two were instantly sent flying. Seeing another branch coming down, they couldn't dodge a second time in mid-air. At a critical moment, Bohm used a psychic medium, controlling a large rock to fly. He used the floating stone to evade the attack. At this time, small stump monsters also surrounded. After leaving the small monsters to deal, Bohm charged toward the tree monster. The arrow was about to hit its target, but it was still blocked from the attack. But the next second, another arrow flew toward the tree monster. leaving a scratch on. This result shocked Debo greatly. It turned out the speed at which the monster's branches moved was much faster than he had imagined. It was impossible to dodge. The branches attacked through the gap. However, at this moment, he had a way. The second ring could shoot 2 arrows simultaneously, with one rocket hiding behind another rocket. No matter how fast he was, it was impossible to block 2 attacks in a row like. At this time, the tree monster could only struggle to. Seeing this scene, Debo felt that the man in front of him was more like a monster. It was precisely because of his distraction that the small monsters surrounded. But the next second, an arrow pierced through. At the same time, the tree monster swung a branch to smash it. He could only jump and dodge continually, seeing another branch attacking him again. At a critical moment, Debo threw him behind and cut the branch in the process. Debo still felt guilty about his earlier distraction. "I just saved you. Can you take back what you just blamed me for?" At this moment, Debo's performance finally earned his recognition. "You seem a bit used. Then let's go together." And then, they charged forward together. Bohm used his old technique to unleash a dual sword attack. Just as the branch was about to be deflected away, Debo directly cut the branch in half. However, at this moment, the tree monster actually attacked from both sides. Under Bohm's command, one person was responsible, while they cooperated seamlessly to crush the branch. But Debo was still hit by the reacting tree monster. Losing his balance, Debo was about to fall into the monster's gaping mouth. At a critical moment, Bohm quickly manipulated the. But the next second, he was still knocked down. Bohm had no choice but to increase the number of controlled. Seeing another branch smashing down, Debo dodged the attack with lightning fast moves. Immediately after, Bohm's rocket interfered with his line of. At this moment, Debo also came into his. In the next second, he swung the long axe towards it. The tree monster, in pain, instantly and directly threw him out. Debo, stabilizing his stance, looked at the tree monster's next move, and in the next second, shot towards its other. At the same time, Bohm once again used the psychic remote control ring to control the long. The long axe instantly flew into Debo's, and in the next second, he swung it towards the. As the tree monster opened its huge mouth towards. At a critical moment, 2 rockets flew out from behind and shot straight into the tree monster's and exploded in the next. The flames instantly engulfed the entire tree monster. On the other side, a girl prayed over the food in front. At this moment, a knock on the door. Debo, having shed his slave identity, returned. Overcome with joy and tears, the two embraced each other. At this time, there was a corpse lying in bones, but he had a calm expression on his. "I saw the magic in my hand," and the house was engulfed in. At the same time, the 100-person dungeon officially. Countless adventurers flocked. At this moment, Abbas was troubled about the candidates entering the 100-person, worried to no end. Because there were epic or even higher items in the top 10 merchant alliances would definitely pay attention to this and would send elite adventurers. Although Bohm was a good, he didn't dare to take that. If he Mr. Lakin would surely blame. Suddenly, a person pushed the door and the visitor was indeed a high-ranking member of the merchant. Mr. Questioning about the selection of candidates for the 100-person. Although he also recommended Bohm to participate, the previous incident where the entire team was wiped made Abbas show his concern. Lakin directly stated that they could test it, and there would be many witnesses at that. It turned out that the test content was to conquer a 40-person. At this moment, countless adventurers stood in front of them. But Bohm and the others, due to their status as, found that other adventurers were not. Abbas that conducting the test was to give those capable a chance to enter the 100-person. Bohm remained as calm as as if he had already anticipated. And when others heard about the 100-person, they showed great. The 40-person dungeon was still the forest battle. The leading red gold male aimed to kill the boss as their main, while the Doran team aimed to clear all obstacles. To increase the number of Bohm and the others, due to their status as found no one willing to team up. Suddenly, a mushroom monster appeared before Doran was the first to launch in an instant, a burst of energy exploded. But after the dust, the mushroom monster stood there on. Doran panicked instantly. His magic had no effect. Then a series of tiny, crackling sounds emerged, which frightened him. Everyone was actually surrounded by the mushroom. Although they ultimately defeated it without any damage, they had already exhausted a lot of stamina by this. Everyone also realized that the monsters in this were clearly much stronger than Doran. That winning by killing the number of monsters was impossible, and they could only change their strength, find the boss and kill. At this moment, Bohm guessed everyone's situation. After realizing that the small monsters were difficult, they would all choose to look for them. Debo thought he was thinking about going to fight the boss, but Bohm was still thinking about winning by killing the number of small monsters. Killing the boss is not the only way. Moreover, he could sense that this dungeon was very dangerous. On the other side, Doran actually discovered a teleportation portal to, but their goal was not to teleport. After marking, they planned to turn and suddenly loud laughter came from behind. The man in green laughed with a sinister By the time he reached, the area was already filled with black. Then he hurriedly ran towards the teleportation. Even if it was just one person, he had to escape. But at this moment, behind, a grinning mushroom man appeared without emitting deadly poison all. In the next second, Doran's expression also became. At this time, Bohm and the others were wandering by. Debo couldn't help. This guy hasn't made a move since entering. Suddenly, a flare appeared and they didn't expect that others would fire a flare after finding. Bohm keenly that Doran's team was missing from. The man in red and gold spoke. They saw Doran's team members being complete. The dungeon was the infamous crazy poison. Hearing this, the others were faced with this boss. They had to give up. But Bohm was thinking about how to. And because the poison mushroom was guarding, they had to face another. He thought Bohm's rocket could deal damage from it, but was silenced by a scolding. Because he knew that with their current, the arrow shot would not cause fatal damage. And not just, even ordinaries were stronger than what they usually do. At this moment, the man in red and gold thought of this, but they didn't purchase anything. Suddenly, Bohm raised his hand. 50,000. 30 people means 1.5. If three, the two of them will act. This directly scared Debo so much that he went. The man in the red scarf. Because not every bait tactic can. If they can't attract the poison, each of them. So, slave bait is useless in high level. Then he pointed at. You are just two rings. One is without, and the slave with no rings can't do anything. These words directly angered. But he was. Bohm stated that if he had a. He wouldn't have fired the. Then he needed to clarify. He wasn't with. Bohm stared at his own wrist. He didn't even know when he. See? The purple-haired man. However, they didn't have more currency. Bohm didn't dwell on it. They could give it after they. Because if they could, they would ultimately become sacked. But everyone had. At this moment, the poison mushroom was enjoying food. Suddenly, a fire arrow flew to. The poison mushroom took a solid hit. Bohm didn't expect to kill it with just. But as soon as it noticed them, immediately. Sure enough, the next second, the poison mushroom ran toward. The others hurriedly ran into the portal. Suddenly, a group of small monsters. Debo swung his, and the small monsters were instantly split. At this moment, the poison mushroom opened its huge. In a critical, a rocket suddenly. Another arrow was dodged and brushed. But under Bone, the arrows darted back and forth. But this only angered the poison. Seeing it was about to run over, the two jumped down without. In a critical moment, they dodged the poison mushroom. Bone did not forget to shoot. The next second, the upper side. Next time, the attack must be full. Debo thought. He didn't expect that. He really wanted to deal. He was direct. They had already completed the base, and the rocket had no effect. How should they go about it? Facing him, but now, the situation has. Because the match was. There is definitely enough time. But Debo still wants. How to. When the rocket is in. Bone did. Still staring at him with dead. On the other side, the others had already escaped. Abbas had. If the time was too. And there were still a few people. The purple-haired one quickly. The Dolan team was completely wiped out. Thanks to Bohm and the two they were able to. And the done was simply not something they. Abbas's expression. So you ran out with your tails between. But facing the crazy poison, they had no way to deal with. Abbas said no. In turn. But the portal did not. Indicating that Bohm and the others had. In Abbas's view, it was just a matter. The two of them could not possibly. At this moment, the mushroom man was still wandering. Far atop the mountain. Was already prepared to. He was going to turn the impossible. The next second, arrows shot out. Knew. The monster he faced this time was stronger than ever. And it was emitting poison, all making it impossible to get close. However, using psychic remote sensing media to make the arrows spin at would greatly increase their pierce. The arrows with rotation darted rapidly. The mushroom man, unable to dodge, was hit. But the arrows did not. The next second, they pierced. Even though he successfully hit, Bohm still had a blank. He had intended to hit the core of his head, but there was a deviation at. It did not cause fatal. Things are going to get more. Sure enough, the next second it rushed. It ran. The alert mushroom men instantly dodged them. Due to the skill cool, he had to kill him before he. Debo hid behind a tree, quietly watching. Seizing the opportunity, he pulled the large rope. The mushroom man was suddenly tripped by the unexpected. As a result, he fell into the swamp at the. When he. His whole body was already. Due to the mud blocking the hole, he could no longer release. Then Debo's long axe swung toward. The mushroom man, unable to dodge, was hit by. Debo used the rope for. The next second, the long axe returned. His feet, trapped in the swamp. Making his move. Debo seized the opportunity to throw the long. The mushroom man, unable to dodge, was in. However, this did not cause. Bohm's rapidly spinning rockets fall. The explosive force splashed mud several. In the mist, the shadow of the mushroom man. Bohm hurriedly instructed Debo to. After receiving the order, he quickly threw. Just as the long axe was about to. It was unexpectedly caught by the. Then, with a force, he pulled. Bohm quickly controlled a tree stump to fly towards the. Interrupting his action just. Debo leaped into the air, dodging. He then moved around him, looking for an opportunity. On the other, Bohm pushed his psychic remote sensing skill. Immediately, mud surged around the mushroom, blocking the. Just as Debo's long axe was about to, the mushroom men launching an attack, but he found nothing and at this moment, Debo had already arrived. Before he could react, his head was just when he thought everything. Bohm's pupils a figure unexpectedly appeared. A fierce punch suddenly knocked him. Then it demonstrated towards Bohm on the. He couldn't understand why he could still move after having his head and so nimble. The rapidly spinning rocket was actually. He intended to remotely control the tree stump. Instead, it became his. He leaped up, climbing toward. He knew that due to the skill he could only shoot. There would be no. Debo, standing up, angrily raised. In the next second, he threw, instantly chopping the mushroom. But what he didn't expect was the mushroom man's speed did not. Bohm saw a dazzling red light appear. The rapidly shot red light. At this moment, a pair of red eyes lit up inside the. Then he burst into. Bohm held the signal gun. Is this? Debo also that the previous strike was actually a. The fired rocket accurately hit the high-speed spinning force instantly. Immediately, a huge toxic mushroom cloud. At a crit, Bohm used a rope to pull. If the speed was just a. He would be corroded by. Just when the two thought. A shadow shot. The mushroom man's half-body actually flew. A red magic stone. The intense red poisonous substance instantly. Quickly filling the. On the other side, Mr. Lakin mocked Abbas. That he actually came back like this. He felt very sorry for that. Suddenly, a knock on the door sounded. The two looked in surprise towards the door. Bohm suddenly appeared before them. In Mr. Lakin's view, things were starting to get interesting. His survival ability was indeed as rumored. Mr. Lakin directly stated whether he could perform again in the 100-person dungeon. This might be very difficult. This answer directly infuriated Abbas, that an adventurer from his own guild would actually pick tasks. He should be aware that he still owes a huge debt. Mr. Lakin, however, changed the question to what do you want? Debo, upon hearing this news, spit out the drink in his mouth. He didn't expect Bohm to be so bold. 5 million per person. For the two of them, that's 10 million. From the previous raid team, Iblis and the others also arrived here, feeling ashamed of their previous actions in the dungeon, questioning their abilities because of the other party's identity, feeling very sorry about it. Immediately, they took out the previously agreed 1.5 million and gave it to them, and also paid a little extra as a thank you. However, Bohm stated, they only did what they were supposed to do. As for other thanks, it wasn't necessary. Abbas was puzzled by Mr. Lakin's decision. 10 million is enough to hire a high-level adventurer. He then took out a page of information and handed it to Abbas. After reading it, Abbas's pupils constricted. The Golden Demon King would also be involved. In Mr. Lakin's view, the war had already begun. The 100-person dungeon had finally opened. The arrival of Bohm and the others attracted the attention of others. A blonde claimed to be a level 1 adventurer. Bohm directly stated he was a C rank. This answer clearly stunned him, because only first or second ring adventurers could enter a C rank. Why would he come here? Suddenly, a voice interrupted them. The newcomers were indeed the Queen's Knights. Bohm was very confused about this. Why cooperate with the Pope's Knights? Because their slots were taken by other alliances, they now had to cooperate with them. to secure a spot for entry. The queen is very concerned about this 100-person dungeon. Immediately, the knights entered the raid with them. Although the Pope may have ulterior motives, the conditions offered are indeed good. Bohm is helpless, hoping it is really just cooperation. Don't think that just because we exchanged a few words, we are on the same level. Kelly's words made Debo very unhappy. He doesn't understand why the wealthy merchant alliance would send the two of them over. He is very disappointed about this. This completely implies giving up. At this time, other alliance teams also arrived here. The Kranku team from the Absolute Merchant Alliance, Kubel team from the Media Merchant Alliance, Natasha's three sisters from the Goderic Merchant Alliance. At this time, a red-haired uncle claimed to be the guard for this raid. Lonk can provide assistance when everyone is teleported out, but the legendary items inside do not belong to them. You will follow the terms agreed upon with the Merchant Alliance to receive your rewards. If anyone is found hiding secretly, it will be seen as a direct challenge. We B-rank adventurer. At this moment, everyone realized that the people before them had already awakened. After Lonk finished speaking, everyone was allowed to enter the dungeon. Kelly also urged Bohm and Debo to keep up with her. She must achieve results in this raid mission. Looking at her attitude, Debo didn't understand why they had to cooperate with such people. Bohm remained silent, saying nothing more. All previous efforts were for this door. This is a dungeon he had never raided in his past life. But he must succeed, because everything starts from here. This is a 100-person dungeon that everyone wants to enter. At this moment, it has become a bloody slaughterhouse. In addition to having ORCs with awakened intelligence, there are also assassins arranged by dark sorcerers. Just after everyone entered the 100-person dungeon, what came into view was vast, boundless grassland. The grass was taller than the people. Kelly angrily scolded them for coming to sightsee. After a moment, she shook them off. At this time, Bohm was lying on the ground. Suddenly, countless porcupines appeared, rushing towards everyone at high speed. They instantly showed expressions of terror. There shouldn't be monsters near the teleportation port. This is an unwritten rule. The appearance of the porcupines scattered everyone. Now, they can only lure them to a place with more obstacles to hunt. Bohm and Debo avoided the porcupine's attack due to their prior preparation. Debo was puzzled as to why he knew this. According to Bohm's experience before returning, there would be many such beast herds crossing the plain. Porcupines are monsters with an average body length of 2 meters. With violent personality, they usually form groups of hundreds or even thousands. Although they are difficult to deal with, it is not impossible to hunt them. It's just that people do not want to expend too much energy here. After all, no one knows what monsters will be in a dungeon of hundreds. It won't just end with porcupine. Before returning, the adventurers who raided the dungeon all failed and had no idea what was happening inside. Just as they were thinking about relocating, they accidentally triggered a mechanism, and a row of sharp wooden spikes shot towards them. Fortunately, Bohm reacted quickly. Otherwise, they would have been pierced through the heart. Bohm looked at the mechanism thoughtfully. Everyone is clearly entering for the first time. Who set this trap? The other team had the same experience. The bald man reacted quickly. He turned around and split the wooden spike. Soon everyone dealt with the trap, cleaned up. They also guessed it was a trap set by some kind of monster. Although they only set some small traps, they were still enough to cause instant death. Only ORCs could have such high intelligence. This kind of monster is equivalent to a boss level in the red. Difficult to deal with. Just as the masked man was about to turn and leave, a strange sound came from behind. When he came to his senses, the bald man's head had already rolled to the ground. Then he saw an unforgettable sight. The heads of the team members fell one after another. Before he could react, a person slashed with a dagger. The man had a mocking expression. What an idiot. As if you know everything. On the other side, a man sat on a stone, muttering, although I don't know whose idea this was, the result is good. At this moment, The three sisters Natasha stood behind him, but their bodies couldn't move. It turned out they were under the man's magic, unable to move for 30 minutes. The eldest sister exerted all her strength to ask him why he did this. The man was obviously taken aback. He was hit by his own magic and could still speak. It looked quite dangerous. In the next second, he shot a rocket with his magic wand. His body was instantly pierced. The man actually had a magic wand like bone. The other two didn't expect that the man in front of them would be so decisive, instantly frightened to the point of losing color. But the man was talking to the court. This is indeed a difficult question to answer. Why do these things? After saying that, he stood up, scaring the two into showing fear. The man grinned lewdly. All of this is for the dark sorcerer, sir. In the next second, the two were pierced by the shot rocket. But the man seemed to be doing something extremely boring. The man received orders from the dark sorcerer William. We have waited in the dark for a long time, just for this moment. Now is the time to reap the reward. The man promised he would not disappoint him. Then William took out a golden feather and gave it to him. I do not accept failure. The man knew this mission could not be abandoned halfway. Otherwise, it would be himself who would die. Then he walked towards Bohm and the other. The battle in the large underground city is about to escalate, with ORCs that have awakened their intelligence, adventurers killing each other. The ambition of the dark sorcerer is even more evident. At this moment, Bohm and the others arrived at the ORC's battle. The scene before them scared Debo into a The ORCs in the underground city were surprisingly well organized. From Bohm, he learned that they are all boss-level monsters. This information dropped his jaw in shock. On top of their natural strength, they possess high-end and seem to be able to loot items from dead adventurers. Some even mutated beings can use skills through items. This completely overturned his worldview. They are simply a group of adventurers, scaring him into quickly proposing to cooperate with Kelly's night order. Although he was very reluctant, it was impossible for just the two of them to work. As they spoke, they found a lone ORC. Debo struck out like lightning, but the ORC bent down to dodge. This surprised him greatly. The reacting ORC swung a punch back. Debo dodged with the carp leap. Before he could stabilize his stance, the ORC's fist came in succession. He could only hurriedly sidestep to avoid. In the next second, a fist came right in front of him. Debo swung his body like a whip to strike out fiercely, interrupting the ORC's attack just in time. Then he slashed at the ORC's thigh. The ORC's massive body crashed to the ground. Debo launched another attack, thinking this would end the fight. He did not expect the ORC surprisingly dodged this attack with agility. Then it looked at Debo with red eyes. With the thunderous momentum, it threw a punch. Debo, unable to dodge in time, was hit direct. He was instantly sent flying. He only stopped when he crashed into a tree trunk. Fortunately, he used his long axe to block and cushion the attack in time. In the next second, the ORC appeared right in front of him. It threw a punch. It directly broke the tree trunk behind him. Debo gripped the large axe tight. With incredible strength, he swung it with one hand. The ORC's arm was instantly severed. Before he could react, he was grabbed by the ORC's other hand. Then he was slammed hard onto the ground. Debo used the momentum to lock his arm, but it didn't last long before he broke free. In the next second, Debo sprang up like a He raised his long axe and swung it at the giant. Debo also didn't expect that Borm was really just standing by. It took him a tremendous effort to kill one. Now, he had to doubt this mission. Before he could finish speaking, the scene before them made their pupils constrict. Limbs and severed legs were everywhere. The Queen's night order was completely wiped out. Suddenly, a painful wail caught their attention. A knight lay under a tree, holding his weapon. Borm and the others thought they were attacked by the beast, but from his words, they learned that it was not the case, but by the followers of the dark sorcerer. Before this, Abbas was puzzled about the dark sorcerer being involved in the 100-person dungeon. He felt confused. They can enter unknown doors that others cannot, because the doors disappear after they leave. So, the evidence of what they did will also fade away. However, this time, the elites of the major alliances will all participate. If the matter leaks out, they will surely be besieged by the major alliance. At this moment, the blonde was showing deep sorrow. Because of Kai, Lee personally admitted that he is a follower of the Dark Sorcerer, believing that the command he gave when entering the portal was part of his plan. This answer surprised Borm and the Dark Sorcerer they meant was a transcendent being from 800 years ago. His many followers threatened the Maple Leaf world, fighting against the 6 heroes of the Maple Leaf world alone. But in the end, they were still suppressed, and from then on, the war showed a one-sided trend. This is something everyone in the Maple Leaf world knows. So everyone is not friendly towards the Dark Sorcerer. Then Borm expressed his thought. Now is not the time to worry about monsters, but to find Knight Kelly. But be prepared to fight when they meet. The blonde said this is exactly what he was thinking. On the other side, Kelly was running away quick. Suddenly, a figure blocked the way. The mage and the hoodie guy who killed the squad before appeared in front of her. The two looked at Kelly with mocking expression. Thanks to the appearance of the porcupine, the team was scattered. They were able to implement their plan. Now, you should have received the gift. Kelly had nothing to say. Without hesitation, she drew her sword. At this moment, Debo was supporting the telling him not to worry too much. The blonde, however, had a smile on his face, but the other hand was already tightly gripping a short blade, radiating magical energy. The man just appearing at the battle shocked everyone immensely. The battle in the 100-person dungeon escalated. Even when facing dozens of people, he still did not fall behind. However, just a short while ago, Debo was still supporting the blonde looking for Knight Kelly, and the blonde's purpose was finally revealed. Just as he drew his sword to stab Debo, at a critical moment, an arrow pierced through his arm. The pain of the severed arm made him kneel on the ground. Debo showed an expression of disbelief. Borm, on the other hand, looked at all of this with indifference. Debo turned to look at Borm. He still hadn't figured out what was going on. And the blonde, seeing the plan exposed, looked at the two with a terrified expression. Everything was as Borm expected. The blonde in front of me is the real trick. Then Borm shot an arrow. I'm very sorry. I don't have the habit of trusting others. On the other side, Kelly's charged attack was surprisingly blocked by Wayne with his sword. At this moment, more dark mage followers joined. One person leaped into the air. At the same time, a dazzling light appeared behind Kelly. With the strike of the magic circle, it actually cut the opponent in half. After this strike, Kelly was panting heavily. Her face showed signs of fatigue. The mage issued a command. Everyone rushed towards Kelly. But in the next second, a head fell to the ground. Kelly looked at the scene in disbelief. I didn't expect to arrive just in time. It would actually be Debo, whom I didn't take seriously. And the appearance of Borm and the other meant that the blonde's mission had failed. Due to the addition of Borm and the other, these self-proclaimed elites could only participate in the battle. Although Kelly reminded them of their strength, Debo, however, appeared unusually excited. Facing the crowd rushing in rapidly, he quickly sidestepped to avoid them, and swung his long axe in the process. Just as he was thinking about swinging the long axe a second time, an arrow brushed past him. At the same time, a figure holding a sharp sword appeared behind him. Debo, unable to dodge in time, was grazed by the sword. Then another person descended from the sky and swung a sword. At a critical moment, Kelly timely raised her sword to block and angrily scolded Debo for what he was doing. In the next second, Debo instantly appeared behind him. With the swing of the long axe, he was directly cut in half. Then a person holding a spear charged over, but was easily dodged by Debo. He swung the long axe and directly knocked the opponent back several meters. The opponent did not expect Debo to be so powerful. Suddenly, a figure flew in rapidly from behind the opponent. It was kicked away by Kelly. Do you call this a... At this moment, the wizard had already cast a spell and shot an arrow. Debo did not expect it. The opponent actually used the same magic wand as facing the rapidly flying rock. He momentarily did not react. In the next second, it exploded instantly. Just when they thought everything was over. After the flames dissipated, Palm appeared before everyone. The wizard showed a look of to be unharmed under his own rocket. Palm waved one hand. He actually controlled the bait to attract the porcupines. Then a group of 2-meter-long porcupines charged out. The scene directly scared the opponents so much that they wet themselves. The man turned the resolving this crisis in the 100-person a peak duel of skills between two great wizards. The man, who was invincible at the same level, faced the strongest opponent. Palm used the bait to attract the porcupines to the battle. But even so, it still failed to cause damage to the followers of the Dark Wizard. Unexpectedly, they were able to completely slay the opponent. It only delayed them for a short time. And their wizard knew very well. The man who withstood his attack would become the biggest. But he still firmly believed that in the no one would be stronger than. At this moment, they must quickly find Palm and the. If they let them leave the Dark Wizard's actions would be exposed. Palm and the others took advantage of the porcupine attack. Escape from the battle. Although Debo was full of fighting spirit, Palm, however, was heavy. He did not understand why Palm did not pursue the victory. But Palm's next words left him frozen in place. He knew very well that the opponent's strength was greater than his. When the wizard's rocket touched, at the same time, Palm accurately shot an arrow. The moment the two arrows made contact, they exploded. However, the opponent's rocket was completely unharmed. It passed through the flame. The scene completely caught him off. He just knew that the opponent's strength was greater than his. The arrows he shot were accurate and precise, but they failed to have any effect. Yet even so, Debo still felt that his boss was strong, until Palm revealed his magic. Depending on the thickness of the magic, even when using the same magic, the speed and power would differ under normal circumstances. Now, they were at the peak of the second circle. The two should be evenly matched, or even stronger than him. However, his understanding of magic was clearly superior, and there was no doubt about it. He has also enhanced his skill. Perhaps he is the strongest in the. This left Debo. While Kelly had a gloomy expression, Debo was still thinking about using the monster. However, Palm did not agree, because after the opponent suffered a loss, they would definitely be on guard. Meanwhile, Kelly was thinking about the future of the Maple. The Dark Sorcerer's followers are actually hiding in the night. This concerns the fate of the Maple. So the top priority now is to teleport away, to give up clearing this. But Palm thought this was meaningless. Kelly, next to him, showed anger on her face, believing that they were once. Staying here is just for that little bit of. Palm did not argue with, but instead stated the current situation. Even if we inform the people outside, what good will it? Do you really think this is the best way to get rid of these? These followers are like, they have infiltrated the Maple world for hundreds of years. If they want to, no one will be able to find them. They will devour the Maple world like parasites. After hearing this, Kelly's emotions suddenly erupted. He thinks he is acting without a nonsense. At this moment, Palm smiled. Clearly, he already has a strategy and he wants them to know who the hunter is. On the other side, those followers have already caught. We must find Palm and the others as soon as. At this moment, Debo appeared behind them, waiting for an opportunity. The blonde's pupils shrank sharp. Debo's giant axe was dodged as he crouched. As his companions prepared to. The rope in the tree was. A huge tree stump knocked him away. The sudden turn of events shocked the. It turned out to be a trap set by. Just when the blonde was distracted, Debo raised his long axe and swung down. But the blonde dodged and took the opportunity to stab him with a short. Debo had anticipated. Then came a ceiling. He even threw away his and started close combat. Every punch landed. Faced with Debo's barrage of the blonde was completely defenseless. At this moment, a crossbow was aimed. Suddenly, the woman felt a chill behind. Kelly appeared behind him like a. The sword she swung was still dodged. Then came an upward slam, but still failed to hit the. Seeing the long sword about to come, the woman hurriedly picked up the crossbow. Her companion was. At this moment, Kelly was already. On the other side, Palm appeared in front of the. He was quite curious if they were waiting. Palm still said little as his eyes fixed on. Both of their staffs activated simultaneously. The rockets from both sides pointed directly at. The two faced off for the first time with full fire. Various skills were unleashed to the. A slight misstep could lead. After Palm decided to confront the dark, he chose to face a wizard of magical. The rockets from both sides pointed directly at. Facing the rapidly flying Palm hurriedly. In an instant, he shot a rocket towards the. Both sides were testing each other, but did not expect the opponent to withstand it. The subsequent explosion raised a cloud. Suddenly, something flew towards him at high. When it flew in front. At this moment, Palm realized it was. In his moment of the opponent had already come behind. His body's reflexes made him dodge. The two once again created. The opponent also did not expect Palm to be able to. He was very curious about how. But Palm remained. He saw the opponent release. Palm simultaneously shot and used telepathy to make the arrow spin. Because under normal circumstances, he knew his arrows could not possibly compete. At this moment, however, there was a slight op. In the next second, the two forces exploded simultaneously. A large pit appeared between. The wizard did not. Palm actually used telepathy to make the arrow spin. He had to admit Palm was. Immediately after, he released another rocket to. Palm hurriedly controlled a stone, but an ordinary stone could not withstand. For a moment, he could only hurriedly fly. At the same, he used telepathy towards the wizard. A rocket unexpectedly appeared behind the. It turned out Palm took advantage of the moment. The stone to release the rocket flew back under Palm's, but was still dodged by the. Immediately after, the rocket chased the opponent through. The exhausted wizard seized the opportunity and released another. The rapidly spinning arrow shot out from Palm. The two energies collided and exploded. Taking this opportunity, the opponent had already come to it. With a mocking smile on it, using the ring in his, he released a wave of green. The poison instantly enveloped and then spread throughout the. After the poison dissipated, Palm stood there motionless. The magic wand also fell to. It turned out to be eroded by this, which could control the opponent and prevent movement for 30. The wizard then walked over with his expression twisted even. Suddenly, Palm made and appeared right in front. A punch landed squarely on him. The powerful force distorted him. With one punch, he was complete. Time rewound to before they entered the under. Debo, having had a few more, spoke up about the last scene in the Mushroom People's under. When the Mushroom People released a large amount of. He actually used the special space of the telepath to inhale the poison. In the end, they managed to. At this moment, the wizard was like a unable to defend himself. The sudden turn of events caught him. A rain of fists fell. The final punch sent him under the control of. The magic wand returned to Palm, and he immediately released. While the opponent was still wailing, before he could react, he was pierced through. The battle in the 100-person underground city finally came to. The man upgraded in a critical and directly blasted the opponent down to half. Just as the man used all his and finally knocked the opponent, a rocket shot out but was dodged by the only piercing through the opponent and failing to cause fatal. The opponent, in a critical moment, ignored his and erupted with a large amount of poison. Seeing this, no longer and absorbed the poison into the special space of the telepath. At this moment, he found that the opponent had long since. He knew that the poison would not affect the and would definitely retrieve the magic wand that had fallen to. This moment was the time to defeat. Suddenly, a fireball appeared behind. Caught off guard, he was instant. Palm never that he would have a hidden card of a his own carelessness gave the opponent an if it were before his, he would never make such a. The opponent seized the chance to release another At this moment, Palm lost his sense of unable to. The loud explosion caught the attention of Debo and their faces were filled with concern for. On the other side, Kelly raised. The opponent's head fell with, urging Debo to quickly deal with the. He was also worried. Palm was facing the opponent's mate. Suddenly, an arrow struck. A group of ORCs unexpectedly charged. They must quickly deal with the ORCs and regroup. But besides these, there is an even more trouble. That is their ORC. Faced with the raging fire in front, he was sure that Palm had no chance of. After relaxing, he spat out a mouthful. To have pushed himself into such a situation, he had to admit the opponent. Suddenly, a look of horror appeared in. Palm surprisingly walked out of the flames. But in Palm was already at the end. He saw Palm take out a he would upgrade through this but the opponent burst in. Because upgrading through the requires sufficient comprehension and a lot of. However, as a Palm never lacked these two. He saw waves of magic. Then, under the opponent's shocked. His third magic ring slowly. In an instant, the upgrade was. Seeing this, the mage. He rushed. Two fire arrows shot rapidly to. At the same time, Palm instantly fired. The opponent's two arrows instantly collapsed. The mage cast a fire. Palm used the mind remote, adding high-speed rotation. The rocket directly pierced through the coming right before. Wherever it passed, it exploded. Palm looked at this scene with a chasm appeared. After the only half a body was. The man simply released a which pierced through the strong. The battle in the 100-person dungeons. Even if Debo and the others used all their, they still couldn't defeat the the opponent could use after Palm single-handedly killed the opponent. The battle here came. However, the battle on the other side had facing the awakened. Debo and the others could. Just as it began, the two still have the strength. Carrie didn't expect Debo to be so. Using the advantage of the forest to cleverly. Just as he swung a huge fireball. The powerful flame energy exploded. Scene. Carrie's pupils suddenly. The opponent's leader actually knows fire. This was completely beyond their. Unable to understand why a monster would use items to. Now, they could only hope that Palm was. Suddenly, an ORC quietly appeared. In a critical moment, they dodged. But it also attracted more ORCs. The ORC's attacks came one after. Carrie could only throw the severely injured. Then, with lightning speed, she swung. Next, she caught Debo. Suddenly, a huge fireball blocked. The leader feel like a cat. Then another fireball. The ground exploded in the flames. He cleverly avoided the vital points in the He had a gloomy expression. In the next second, he charged forward with the under the countless ORCs. Debo had a gloomy face. Like chopping. The furious leader directly released. But at this moment, Debo had already leaped in. Carrie looked at this scene. Just as the giant axe made contact, a fireball. The already exhausted Debo was. Unexpectedly, the opponent's skill had no. The previous strike also. The embarrassed and angry leader cast a huge fireball. The two knew they could no longer withstand the. They saw the opponent's fireball flying toward. A high-speed rotating rocket pierced through. The leader looked at this scene and was pierced through the body. Carrie was shocked only to see Palm. It seems I'm not too late. The battle of the 100-person dungeon finally came. But in the end, only 3 people. During this time, Palm finally. The reason why ORCs could. Palm leveled up, awakened, and turned the tide by killing the gate guard, Lonk, seemed very forward, and there was no. Suddenly, from the direct, a commotion. The dungeon gate actually long, and the sight before him. He saw 3 people collapse. When Palm woke up, he was already being treated, and Lonk, who had been guarding. The first thing he did was question what happened. Because among the elite alliance who only the 3 of he had to know what. However, Palm appeared as if he had heard He lowered, but Lonk urged him to. Palm struggled to say that there was a. He knew the other party would definitely not. Then he asked for pay and drew the D. Lonk's pupils constricted instantly upon and cold sweat down. He could only summon the leaders to hold and emerge. But everyone was not complete. Even if it was 100, it was. The elites of each alliance could not. Then Lonk took out the drawing of. He believes that Palm and the others. Seeing this, everyone began to discuss. They say they are. If there is a large, then it would be no different from a. Only Frank does not. He believes that his could never fall unless someone is secretly harming others. Immediately, everyone. Because the all came from the. However, Abyss. Just because someone in our team awakened. And while they think they betray. Frank, however, wants him to. Abyss stated that they did not take. After Palm's injuries improved, the final conclusion of was not to hold Palm and the other. After a golden snail appeared before. Kelly also did not expect that he would really. After everyone Palm burned down the. However, Palm wanted Kelly to throw away all the items, and they needed to. Because after he killed the. He obtained an item, it. It can increase your fire magic output by. And it has a. This is the reason why adventurers were eliminated. But this he must take out. Kelly. That there are guards at the exit for. If it is not taken out, it is the same. Suddenly, the two A snail. Unlike others, this one is called, has no attack, but tends to sniff out, and the more the larger its. This is also a creature that Palm discovered. He immediately placed the feather, and a fire burned down the. This is why aside from, no one will know what happened. At this moment, Palm successfully obtained. Kelly was curious why Palm knew about the, and Palm's explanation was simply that he didn't want to return, and is to carefully collect information on if they will hide on side. A subordinate is reporting on the situation in the 100. Their plan has actually, although Palm's report did not mention, and he knows this matter has definite. They will be the only about the return of the dark. Things are going to get very. The 50-person dungeon is about to open.